Welcome. Following is a video conversation with Sohail Wazir. He's the head of sales and marketing for a brand known as Blue Tribe Foods. Blue Tribe Food is essentially trying to create an awareness around plant-based meats which can allow for folks who had previously not enjoyed meats to go out and try what it's like to have meat, and they urge that current meat eaters would try out their products and see if they can actually make a switch to a sustainable living so that the climate impact that has been done can be reversed. In this video, we spoke about the impact of damage to the environment caused by meat eating and the process of meat cultivation. We spoke about how they actually built and grew this brand and the idea where it actually generated from. I hope you enjoy this conversation. So with that, let's begin. Yeah, we're good to go. We are live. So yeah, not exactly live like we are not live on YouTube, but yeah, we have hit record. We are recording. So for the folks who I want to actually first I begin with saying that thanks first of all for doing this podcast. Thanks for taking out the time to do this. And for the folks who may not know about you, first, can you give us a minute or 2 minute long intro about who you are, what do you do, so that the folks who will be watching this video will actually get to familiarize with who you are and be able to relate with you.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on this.
It's my pleasure.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure to be here. So my name is Sohail. I represent a company called Blue Tribe. We are makers of plant-based meat in India. So it's about a year and a half old, and I handle the business for the company, the sales, marketing, operations, and all of that. I'm out and out. I mean, I'm a guy who's been with the FMCG industry for a while now. So about 10 years first with Colgate, then with Cadbury, before we actually started off and are now doing Blue Tribe. So that's a bit about me. I think I'm more of a marketing and sales kind of guy, and have been so throughout my career.
Okay, so you are part of my tribe. So I belong to a similar circle, but not in the FMCG space. I'm more in software space. Yeah, I've been working in that space. Yeah, but yeah, you're part of my tribe basically here. Yeah. So can you explain a bit about what Blue Tribe Fruits are essentially trying to do in terms of with their plant-based food options and alternative proteins? What is the goal that it is they're trying to achieve, and what is the overall landscape that we are part of right now?
Sure. So let me start with a little bit of context as to where plant-based meat comes from, and what is the requirement. Why does this product even exist, basically, right? Plant-based meat is essentially products which are aimed at non-vegetarians to help them reduce the consumption of meat without any compromise on the taste, the texture, the look, the cooking properties, the feel that you get from eating meat. Now, obviously, the next question to that is why do we want non-vegetarians to cut down on their meat consumption? Because I mean, it's right there, right? So I mean, there are multiple issues with meat consumption in its present form right now, right? We don't deny that maybe from an evolutionary point of view, meat consumption might have been one of the triggers for humans becoming the top of the food chain. In the sense that once we converted from a plant-based or a hunting foraging sort of diet to a meat diet, we were getting enough and more calories, which allowed us more time for other activities like farming, like building civilizations and all of that. All the other herbivores that you see are generally spend all their times looking for food, or they're sleeping, right? That's how the animal kingdom currently plays out. So meat from an evolutionary standpoint was probably very, very important from humans becoming the top of the food chain. But we've obviously evolved and come a long way since those prehistoric times, right? Yeah. Meat consumption in its present form is, if I could give you some numbers, means that we are killing about 80 billion land animals per year to feed 8 billion population, that is humans. That's about 10 times the amount of animals that we have to grow, then kill, and then get the meat from that. So it's
Right.
so apart. I'm not going to get into the ethics of whether killing an animal is right or wrong, but there are other implications of having to grow this many amount of animals, right? The
Yes.
one of the implications is land use. Almost 60% of the land that is currently under cultivation is actually growing crops for these animals. So
Yeah.
you're actually having to grow a lot of crops. You're feeding it to these animals, growing them up, and then consuming. And then as humans, we're consuming it. So it's inefficient in that way. Almost 80% of all the antibiotics that are currently being manufactured are being fed to animals because
Yes.
you have to bring up animals in such a small, tiny space. You have to ensure that none of them get sick. If they do, then the whole sort of herd gets sick, and you got to prevent that. So these animals are injected with a lot of antibiotics, a lot of steroids to help them grow quickly. This finds their way to us, and obviously there is the other risk of always having a super bug which can overcome these antibiotics, much like what COVID is, or what swine flu was, or what, say, avian flu was maybe about a decade ago, right? And obviously, the amount of greenhouse gases that these animals give out during their farting and burping and all of that actually is a
Yes.
huge contributor towards CO2 and greenhouse gases. Or 15% of the greenhouse gases are coming from, uh, animal agriculture in that sense. So that's where
That's right.
plant-based meat comes in, right?
Yeah.
Plant-based meat is essentially trying to, give you the taste of meat which we know and love, without the implications on the planet and the environment. So
Yeah.
that's what plant-based meat is. What Blue Tribe is, look, it's not a new concept, honestly. Plant-based meat has been around globally for about a decade now. There are companies like Beyond Meat.
Yeah.
There
That's the
is
first name that comes
Impossible
to mind.
Foods. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So they've been around for a while now. They were obviously making products for the Western sort of market, which is more beef dominated, burgers, steaks, and stuff like that.
Yes.
What we are trying to do is make those same products, give those same sort of values, but to an Indian taste palette, right? Well, we Indians are
Right.
more used to consuming curries, used to consuming keemas, kebabs, stuff like that, right?
Patties.
So that's patties. So
Yeah.
that's where we are. So that's that's the idea. Blue Tribe is trying to be, trying to bring plant-based meat to the Indian taste palette. So that's in a nutshell. I think that's what we do.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. So, in retrospective, we are like still like the entire history of human beings is still 16,000 years old, and through that evolution, if we were to look at animal farming, it's maybe less than 1,000 years old. So we are still trying to figure out what kind of nutrition would be actually applicable for humans to actually evolve, which would be beneficial. And that in that way, I would say that plant-based meat presents a very interesting viewpoint to where we can actually see humans evolving towards. And there is this growing movement in India. Although I would say one thing, that still it's a bit of an elitist movement. Would you agree that people are shifting towards vegan foods, or shifting completely from meat based diet to a plant based diet?
So veganism, I mean, I would not agree that veganism is elitist. In fact, a lot of, uh, in fact, a couple of friends of mine are actually doing this research right now.
Okay.
But a lot of tribes, in India have been vegan since the beginning of, like, whenever that tribe was formed. So veganism
Okay.
is not alien to India. Honestly, the consumption of meat, the consumption of milk is actually, when we think about the consumption of milk, it has always been limited to the north and the center of India, because towards the south of India there was always, like, historically there was always a milk shortage, and that's why products like, say, Horlicks and all of them were
Yeah.
formed, because they were supposed to give the nutrition of milk without having the milk in place. So
Okay.
so dairy is one of the big sort of uh, underlying aspects of veganism, like being dairy free, and the other is meat free, right? So again, so it's not like, if you are eating a dal roti, that's also probably vegan. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
I
an
agree.
elitist moving. So it's not an elitist movement. I think what you mean to say is plant-based meat, because it's a new concept, people shifting to that,
Yeah.
maybe the upper echelons of society. So maybe veganism not an elitist movement. I would say it's always been around in India. Maybe hasn't been called veganism as such,
Okay.
but yeah, it's always been there.
Okay, I'll just frame the question in such a way. So I believe that this concept whole started with, Los Angeles here, that people were started to shift from dairy to almond milk to peanut milk. And in that aspect, I would say that it was a little bit of, elitist shift. Now, Indians have been primarily vegetarians and a very high consumers of, dairy-based products. So when you say, you are eating your dal, roti, yeah, even if you're eating rice, these are also plant-based products,
Yes.
plant-based consumer products, but they would not be, we were not calling them vegan consumption. We were like, ha, we are
Yeah.
just vegetarians and
Yeah.
we do not prefer meat. But if we were to actually look at the trend of how people evolved to these things, would you consider that कि जहां से इसका trend शुरू हुआ, from that perspective, it is a bit of elitist? That was what my perspective was here.
I mean, I will have to give it to the West that they're great at marketing stuff. So
Yeah.
the whole so veganism has been marketed because it came from, I mean, it evolved from people who did not want to, wanted to lead, say, a cleaner lifestyle and all of that. The term, I guess, veganism has also come from the West, like you rightly said, from LA or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
But I think the idea behind it is, I mean, it's not alien to Indians or to any other part of the world.
That's true.
People have, yeah. The term might be elitist, and calling yourself vegan maybe at one point in time, maybe about 20 years ago, was to be like you were going against the flow in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's evolved a lot from there now.
Okay, so coming back to Blue Tribe, so can you share your story of how did you get to join Blue Tribe? You are the chief commercial officer, you are heading all the sales and marketing efforts for the team. So what is your story behind this? And also, do you eat meat at all, or are you completely?
No, I'm completely vegan I'm a vegan for a long time now.
Okay.
As vegan as you can be. So, I mean, it's not veganism is not just food, right? It's also related to lifestyle, like no leather,
that's true,
stuff like that. So all of that. But yeah, so the way I came about to Blue Tribe was, like I said before, I was working with Cadbury, and so Sandeep and Nikki, who are the founders of Blue Tribe, right? They have been big believers in sustainable food tech for a while now. And they've even invested in Western meat analog or meat substitute companies earlier, right?
Okay.
And they were looking at doing something for in India as well. They were looking to find a company which could provide the same sort of benefits to an Indian market.
Right.
At that time there were none. So which is where they decided that they will found it by themselves, right? So that's where Blue Tribe actually stems from. Sandeep and Nikki are they really believe that it is up to us as people to take steps to mitigate climate change. We can't just leave it up to governments and stuff. We have to do our little bit ourselves. So that's where they came from. The first to join Blue Tribe was actually the brains behind all the products, which is Dr. Navneet Deora. He's from IIT Kharagpur. He's a food scientist from IIT Kharagpur. So he was the first to join and actually started developing the products. Me and Sandeep actually started talking towards the mid of Feb 2020, and we were basically, and he was discussing what his vision for Blue Tribe is. And I was very, very sold on the idea. I was always, looking to do something in the sustainability space. So then finally, in about July of 2020 is when I joined Blue Tribe full time, and we launched our first product in December 2020. So, in the first few months, we spent obviously, doing the R&D behind the products, developing something for the Indian palate, and that's where then I joined in.
Okay, interesting. So so it was more of an alignment in the core beliefs behind going vegan and the impact. So a lot of the people who speak about going vegan or transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle are and who present very analytical and logical viewpoint are the ones that are often speaking about that, the impact on the environment of animal farming and animal agriculture is the worst thing that you could be possibly doing. So that's really interesting. So can you give us some facts and figures in terms of, the, and in India, I believe it would be pretty low because the massive impact comes from beef-based products because of the amount of food that they consume, the water requirements that, they are actually fed. So what is the total scale of impact that animal farming creates on climate change in particularly?
Sure. So animal farming, let me give you the global sort of figures and then maybe come
Sure.
down to India.
Yeah.
So to start off with, the reason why people want to give up meat or want to go vegan is generally one out of three. One is for the animals, which is, they don't want to inflict that kind of harm or that kind of pain on another living being. One is for the environment, which is where Blue Tribe sort of fits in, right? We want to do something which sustains the earth for generations to come. And one is
Right.
for health reasons also. So there is now a parallel sort of theory which says that you can get all of your essential nutrients, proteins, carbs, and all of that from a plant-based diet without having the inflammatory properties that meat actually brings to the table, like cholesterol and all of that, right? So there are three reasons why people want to actually give up meat or give up animal-based food products. In terms of impact on the environment, so animal farming is a fairly inefficient. Animal farming or getting meat from animals is actually a very inefficient way of consuming or getting the nutrients that a human needs.
Okay.
For example, in order to get 1 kg of chicken meat, I have to feed that chicken about 10 kg of soy or corn. And that is the ratio in which, because that chicken has to grow from a small egg
From a chick
to the size of from a chick or an egg to a full grown chicken, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you can cull it. It takes about with the current breed of chickens, I think it takes about 2.5 to 3 months for this to happen. Which, mind you, is also influenced by steroids. It used to otherwise take about 2 to 3 years.
That's right.
So that chicken has to actually grow till there. You have to keep feeding it until you can get actually 1 kg worth of chicken meat from there. Whereas if you shift to a plant-based meat or a plant-based diet, the efficiency goes up multifold. So you're able to get 1 kg of protein from maybe 2 kg or 3 kg of plant-based meat. Plant-based sources, right? So you've got 10 versus 3. So that's the first impact. The inefficiency in the system is kind of removed. The second is the amount of land and water that is used to grow these, large-scale animals, like animals at this large scale, 80 billion animals like per year, like I said, right? 70%, 60 to 70% of all the cultivable land is currently being used for these animals or to grow food for those animals. If we actually remove that, if we actually didn't be so animal dependent, the entire human food supply could be done in 40% of the total amount of cultivable land that is currently under cultivation. Which means you could actually give back the rest of the land to rewild the earth, to populations like the indigenous animals in the wild who are very, very badly impacted because we have to finally take away land from forests to bring it under cultivation, right?
Yes.
The forest land is also something that is contributing to taking away the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. The trees, the lungs of the earth, as they are called, right? The forest.
Absolutely.
So if we are able to regrow the forests, all of the implications of climate change because of greenhouse gases can be reversed or at least mitigated to a large extent, right? So that's the other impact. The third impact is genuinely just the amount of steroids and antibiotics that are going in because of the sheer amount of animals that we have to grow in the same amount of land.
Yes.
The antibiotics and steroids that we need to give these animals is going through the roof. About 80% of all the antibiotics and steroids which are being produced by humans is going towards animals. And sometimes there are bugs that, super viruses that overcome these antibiotics and, they find their way to humans. And That's this.
That's
That's
true.
what zoonotic diseases are. So that's where the impact is. Now, like you said, beef is actually is much bigger in terms of consumption. But did you know that India is actually the second largest exporter of beef in the world after Brazil?
I
So
did not know that.
so it is it is all of the beef that is going globally is actually being produced in India.
Oh,
And it's not just that, right? We are by the sheer size of our population, by 2030, I mean, some projections say by 2030 we'll be the third largest consumers of meat at an absolute value. Maybe not on a per capita value,
okay.
because per capita we eat much less meat than say somebody in the US. I think the last figures from the 2010 2012 type of date are that we eat about 10 kg of meat a year versus about 100 kg which is in the US. So 120 kg which is in the US. So per capita it's still low, but because of the sheer size of our population, we're going to be huge meat consumers very soon. And as economies improve or economies get better, meat consumption automatically goes up. I think this is a trend that has been seen over the past hundreds of years now, the world over.
Yeah, that was I read this report that as the per capita of a normal household increases, the
Yes,
meat consumption of that household also increases in
absolutely.
linear fashion. Yeah, I agree with that. So when it comes to blue tribe, so what do you think is the market size of plant-based food is in India, and what is the potential for the growth that we can see in, let's say, for example, 2025 or 2027, in that time frame?
Sure. So market size, honestly, in India is very minuscule. I will say it's about uh, maybe about 25 to 30 million dollars currently is what the market size is.
Okay.
But however, the upside is huge. I mean, see, you have to see that as a category, while plant-based meat may be small right now, what all the companies, including Blue Tribe in this space, are doing is essentially competing against meat.
Yes.
We have to bring products that are innovative enough, that taste good enough, that are at the right price point, so that a meat eater, like a normal meat eater, can then just has to make a choice with, hey, you know what, I want to eat a sausage tomorrow morning for breakfast. I know I'm going to get the same taste from A, B, and C companies, which are meat, and plant-based meat. Say, which
Yeah.
one should I choose? At the end of the day, we want the choice to become a personal sort of, to become personal choice as to what do I want to choose. Do I want to kill an animal and take that sausage, or do I want to get the same taste from a plant-based source?
Right.
Until I think, and once we get there, essentially the market is massive. I think about 12,000 to 13,000 crores is the market uh, that meat products in supermarkets. I'm only talking about like frozen meat products. I'm not even comparing myself or plant-based meat to freshly bought butchered meat, because
Okay.
it's still a while till the technology can reach that level of bones and all of that. But essentially talking about meats that is available in the frozen section of a supermarket, I
Yeah.
think that value is about 12,000 to 13,000 crores, which we will try and take as much of a market share as possible.
Got it. That's interesting. So, coming back to this thing, so you said then there are a couple of other players in the market as well. So, who do you think is the current competition in terms of plant-based meat is? Because you have said that the main competition is with meat, but in terms of
Yeah,
the 12,000 crore market cap, there will also be other players who would want to capture that size. So, in that market, who do you think that uh, is there a brand that is doing similar, and you feel their branding is on point, their marketing is on point, and they are also like coming up with a good product that you feel that this is a worthy competitor or a rival, you could say, to have?
sure. I mean, in fact, I would say we are the competition for some of the other brands. We are the upstarts, because guys like Good Dot is another company based out of India. I mean, Indian plant-based meat company.
Okay.
They've been in existence a lot longer than we have, obviously. So they've been, and they have their products in a lot more places. Availability has been solved by them. In fact, they even have actual like completely branded restaurant outlets in some cities. So they are obviously probably the leaders simply by virtue of being the first movers in this space. So I think they've been around
Right.
since a good 5-6 years now. There was also a company recently floated by. There is also a company recently floated by Jenilia and Ritesh, which is
Yeah,
called Imagine Meats, which is also in the same in the similar sort of space. All of us are, I think, while we're in the same space, everybody is making slight differences in the kind of products we're making. So, for example, Good Dot's products are ambient. They don't require freezing, so they are shelf-stable sort of products.
okay.
Us and Imagine are frozen products. They do a lot more Indian sort of variants in the sense that they're doing biryanis and stuff. Whereas we are trying to do more unflavored meats, which people can take home and cook to their liking. So
Okay.
so ready to eat versus ready to cook in that sense. There's a couple of guys which also have been around. There's someone called Greenest in Delhi NCR region. There is somebody called Shaka Hari, which also does similar products to us. So there are 5 or 6 companies which are in this space. Slight differences in the kind of positioning that we all have and the kind of products that we're all making. But yeah, essentially the idea is to have every use case that a meat consumer might want, and then give them the option of, hey, do you want to not consume meat this time and try a plant-based meat product substitute instead?
Right. Right. That's interesting. So coming to the main news here, so you recently, got invested as well as, got Virat and Anushka as your brand ambassadors for the brand. So how did that happen? Like, because you actually got you got the biggest influencer that we have in India right now, the biggest influencer, be it Instagram, be it YouTube, be it
Yeah, I
television,
mean,
yeah? And they are going to endorse your brand. So how did that end up happening?
I would like to believe that they like the product. So they have been but they have tried the product, and they do really like it as well. See, essentially, it works. The association works very well for both of us. See, Virat and Anushka have been big proponents of animal welfare and of leaving a greener future for a while now. Like, I think they even have some animal rescue missions working in various cities.
I
Uh,
think, yeah,
in
Anushka
in
might
in,
be
in
in,
Bombay.
yeah, might be
Yeah,
in touch with these NGOs that are in animal rescue.
and they've been big believers in the whole giving up meat or being in a plant forward diet for a while now. So in that sense, they were like the perfect sort of influencers, if I could call them, or ambassadors for us uh, to take this forward to the mass of the country. See, the main challenge that is facing not just us but the entire plant-based meat category is the awareness that such a product exists and the reason for its existence, right? There are a few obviously early adopters who would know about why it is there, who have traveled, who've read about Beyond Meat, who've read about Impossible Foods and so on,
Yeah,
who would already know this space and who would already be trying out our products, right? But
right.
to cross that chasm between the early adopters and the mass of the market is basically the awareness that is needed to do this, is basically why any of us. So for example, Good Dot has also got Neeraj Chopra on board, or Ritesh and Janelia, by the mere virtue of them being the faces of Imagine, are also trying to spread awareness in that sense,
Right.
right? So that's where they come in. I mean, essentially, they they have been they have been proponents of this space for a while, and we're also trying to work in the same space. So that's where the sort of amalgamation of ideas happen. And as a purpose-driven brand, I think it was very important for us to get ambassadors who believed in the purpose. And I think that has been, in that sense, we've kind of hit the nail on the head.
Like, where I do want to also know, like, how did you actually get in touch? Like, was it some kind of a through PR agency that you got in touch, or like you
Oh,
knew
no,
you
no,
had?
no.
Okay,
No, I think somebody from their team actually got in touch with me,
oh,
saying that, hey, they're interested in this space. So do you want to have like a chat? So we did, and it kind of the ideas were similar. So that's where we kind of hit it off.
Okay, that's
There's
interesting.
no agency, honestly. It was a direct contact.
Okay, so okay, that's interesting. Got it. So, what are the 5-year plans in terms of where will we see blue tribe foods go from here to 2027?
Ideally, to every home is the hope.
Okay.
But the idea is to, like I said, to have uh, plant-based meat variations or plant-based meat products for every kind of meat product that is out there. So if there is a kebab out there, I want to have. If there is a galati kebab, there should be a plant-based galati kebab out there. If there is just mutton curry cuts, which you're using in your Rogan Josh or your butter chicken, you're using chicken curry cuts in your butter chicken.
Yes.
I want to have as many use cases as possible available from plant-based meat, so that consumers can make their own choices there, right? I think in the next few years, what you'll see from Blue Tribe is a plethora of product options out there in the market. You will also see us getting into a lot of places where meat is being consumed. So veganism or a plant-based diet was essentially only limited to a few restaurants all over the country, right? You would have vegan only restaurants or plant-based only restaurants that were there so far. But
That's
what
right.
we are seeing now is that a lot more mainstream restaurants also want to have vegan options out there on their menu, right? So you will see a lot of our products also being used by a lot of these restaurants all over the place. So, and this trend has actually already been started by some of the five-star restaurants, five-star hotels in the country. So we supply to, say, the Four Seasons in Bombay, supply to the Taj, we supply to the JW guys in a few locations, the ITC guys in a few locations, because they all want to, because they have that clientele, they have that demand who is asking for plant-based meat products on their menus. That
Right.
my hope and my hope is that that sort of demand trickles down to every restaurant in the country, and you will see us or a variation of plant-based meat there.
So your R&D team must be busy 24/7, coming up with all these sorts of different
Yeah,
variations of plant-based.
it takes a lot, honestly. Let me not take away anything from Dr. Navneet and his team. Uh, we have, in fact, along with Dr. Navneet, we have a chef who Nirvan Thakkar, who is from the Culinary Institute of America, which is one of the premier culinary schools in the world.
Okay.
And between the two of them, they literally test every product, maybe with 10 types of different ways of cooking, 10 types of curries, 10 types of flavors. Flavor, like you want to go with an oriental flavor, you want to go with a masala flavor, you want to go with a cleaner flavor. So the amount of testing that goes into getting a product out there is just insane. And it has to be, right? Because we want to put products out there which consumers know and love, like, which they've been eating so far from animals, but now are getting from a vegetarian 100% plant-based source. So yeah,
And
they're extremely busy.
yeah, yeah, that's true. So it's also going to be a massive behavioral change, because if for example someone decides to go out there and purchase a blue tribe, let's say mutton patty, and they do not find a similar kind of taste, so that would actually create a massive friction for them to actually purchase it another time. So the amount of testing that I am imagining would be like insane, because you do not
Absolutely,
have to
because
create a change in behavior. You're creating a change in behavior, but you want the experience to remain the same.
absolutely. In fact, I think you hit the nail on the head there. If the person who is trying out, say, a plant-based product for the first time does not
Yes.
have a good experience, that person is probably lost to me for another 2-3 years. That person is not going to try a plant-based product again for the next 2-3 years because of that bad experience that person has had, right?
True.
So it is extremely important that, and not just the product, it's extremely important that we get the entire experience right, which is getting the product to the person in the right way, getting the taste absolutely right, getting the cooking times, instructions absolutely right, so that there is no friction in the way that they were cooking meat earlier and they are cooking these things now.
Right.
So yeah, it's we have to ensure that the entire experience is as close to what it was earlier,
Yes.
in order to ensure that that person will return to the plant-based meat category again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. So, now I think we should also talk about, from a nutritional standpoint, because there have been a lot of myth, and, Netflix even came out with this documentary. I do not remember the name of that documentary, but is that,
They have plenty of them.
yeah, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, wherein
The
he was
game
actually,
changers.
yeah, the game
Game
changer.
changers.
That's right. Yeah. So there is this major argument that plant-based meats do not provide you with the same amount of nutrition or the nutrients and minerals that you would get from animal sources, essentially. So what is it like plant, like is Blue Tribe making sure that you are getting the adequate amount of proteins, adequate amount of the minerals as well as the nutrients? What's the process behind that is like? Sarah, can you share?
Yeah, sure. So, honestly, I might not be very good with the technical terms for it, but I will try and give my best explanation for this, right?
Sure.
What we are trying to do, and what all the other plant-based meat companies are trying to do, is get you the same nutrition that you were getting from meat, at least the good parts of it,
Right.
and leave out the bad parts if that can be done. So an example of that would be meats. Cholesterol only comes from animal-based sources, so you can only get it from eating meat or from dairy, stuff like that. So plant-based meat, by the mere virtue of not having any animal products in that, don't have the cholesterol. So hey, there's one, say, point for plant-based, right? But obviously animal meat has a higher protein content, or have very high protein contents, right? And they have things like vitamin B12, which
Yeah.
are otherwise not found in very big quantities in the plant-based world. What most companies in this space are trying to do is match macronutrients as well as micronutrients exactly, or as close to animal protein as possible. So, for
Okay.
example, our chicken keema
Yeah.
contains 20 grams per protein, 20 grams of protein per 100 grams of the product, which is
Okay.
same as what you would get from if you were consuming chicken also, right?
Yeah, it's pretty
Uh,
close.
yeah, so chicken also you will get maybe 19 to 22% depending on what kind of a chicken and all of that it was.
Yes.
But what extra you will get is, you will get a lot more fiber from our keema, which you would not have got from, say, chicken, right?
Right.
Now coming to vitamin B12. So when we started off, we didn't have vitamin B12 added into our products, but
Okay.
now Dr. Navneet and his team have actually figured out a way to get vitamin B12, cyanobalamin. I'm not very sure of the name, but from plant-based sources, and we are actually adding it to a couple of our products, so that
Okay.
people who to the sausages actually, so that the people who are on a plant-based diet don't have that lacking in their diets. There is a whole separate industry which is doing the research behind, which nutrients are actually required in what quantities. But what we are trying to do is just match what animal protein gives you, and
Yes.
not trying to get into whether it is really required or not. So we're just trying to match that sort of nutrition profile.
Yeah, because so the reason why I asked this question is that vitamin B12 is the one nutrient that gets spoken about, that people who actually
Absolutely.
transition to plant-based diet started having deficiencies in vitamin B12, and how important it is for your brain health. So that's why I
No,
thought that
absolutely.
this one.
Absolutely, which is why we are adding it to. We started off with 2 products now, but going forward, we will do it across the range.
Okay. So in terms of, I have gone through your website. I read a couple of your blogs. So are you available right now on your website, or are there other platforms that you are also marketing it on?
Yeah. So we are fairly widely available. So from our website, we are available about 15 cities directly, which means we have, because it's a frozen product, so we have our own cold storage in each of these cities, and our own delivery guys who, once we get the order, that guy is going to go out and deliver it, right?
Right.
That's how we started off, because
Okay.
it was a new concept, and we wanted to ensure that the consumer is getting the full experience of getting it delivered, and then they can kind of cook it in the way they want.
Right.
But what we've also done over the past 6 months, or is we are also present with at least the gourmet food retailers in the country. So take a Nature's Basket, or take a
Yes.
La Marche, or a Modern Bazaar, or a Food Hall, Q Mart, Simply Namdaris in Bangalore. All of the premium, gourmet food retailers in the country is somewhere that we've tried to be present with, because that's where we expect our clientele to be
Okay. Yeah.
buying their meats from, right? We're also present with e-commerce platforms like Swiggy, Instamart, which really solves a lot in terms of the availability factor for us. Because once you're getting our product within the next 30 minutes, then there is no, I mean, that availability is not a factor anymore in somebody trying out plant-based meat, right?
Right.
So we're available with Swiggy, Instamart, with Big Basket, with Amazon, with Blinkit, Grofers, which is now Blinkit,
Yeah,
and
acquired
a
by
couple of
Zomato.
other localized, yes, and a couple of other localized sort of platforms as well. So availability wise, we've kind of spread ourselves to at least the premium purchase destinations of the country in terms of food purchases, and we're also available, like I said, with a lot of Horeca clients. If you're based in Bombay, there is a restaurant called Mia Cucina. We're present with the Nirula's guys in Delhi
Okay.
as well. And in Bangalore, we have a couple of tie-ups with a burger chain and so on and so forth.
Okay. So one thing you mentioned that you are also tying up with restaurants and you and ITC. So ITC, I think in 2018 they started out with their own frozen food snacks category. So is there any
MasterChef.
potential? Yeah, with the master chef, exactly. So is there any potential that you would actually consider partnering up in terms of frozen foods that would be like having ITC white label blue dry products and putting it out
I think
on the
they're.
stores?
I think they already have plans of launching their own plant-based meat range.
Oh, got it. Got
So
it.
let's see.
So that will be a conflict of interest in that case.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be. It can be seen as competition in this space heating up. But I
Yes.
guess the more number of players there are, the more noisy we are. The category is going to get that much more awareness. So I guess it's good for the time being, at least.
Yeah, as the whole category is growing, it would be actually like the more people
Yeah,
enter the market, the more adoption will occur. Yeah, I agree
yeah.
100% here. Okay. So, one thing that I did notice was that were there any challenges when it comes to, branding your products? Because I saw almost all of the packaging of your products, online that you have mentioned, and most of them mention like chicken momos, mutton keema, mutton patties, and with a small or maybe not small, but a reasonable size plant-based written on it. So, what's the idea behind that? That more focus on the chicken aspect or the mutton aspect, and a nominal or a small amount of that branded as plant based. I
So
really wanted to know.
yeah, so and this was a debate that we internally had in the team for a very, very long time before we actually went with the branding. See,
Okay.
we have to go back to who the consumer is for us, right? The consumer is a non-vegetarian who loves the taste of meat, but knows that there is some amount of impact associated with that, which can be mitigated if they go for a plant-based option, right?
Right.
Now, I want to communicate to this consumer that, hey, what you've been eating, say, chicken nuggets for all this while. What you're getting here is plant-based chicken nuggets. So
Right.
the impact over there has to, I mean, I have to tell the consumer that, you're going to get the same taste as chicken, but only from a plant-based source. We also thought of, and a lot of people ask us, why don't we call it plant-based nuggets? Because then a lot of non-vegetarians would also want to consume it.
Right.
But so there's two reasons for it. One, our core audience and our core purpose is to try and reduce meat, right? We want the non-vegetarians to buy us when that, because every pack of ours that they buy, they're buying less pack of same meat, right? At least, I mean, not as easy, but that's the idea that I'm trying to get at, right?
Sure.
But if I call them plant-based nuggets, the non-vegetarians would not probably think of us as being an equivalent of what they would have otherwise bought in chicken, right? And the other one being that plant-based nuggets comes across as a little bit ambiguous, because people might think that it might be like an aloo cutlet or something also, because plant-based nuggets, you really don't know what it could be construed as, right?
Yes.
But the naming the entire, in fact, even if you look at the colors of the packs and everything right now, we've tried to keep it very, very close to meat and not in the whole green space, because
Yeah.
that again is a little bit again is a little bit taking away from our core audience, which is non-vegetarians with a conscience.
Right. Got it. So um, yeah. So I also wanted to know that some of your products are built in an R&D lab. So what about the chemical composition of the product? So for example, if a new consumer watching this podcast decides to go out there and buy a Blue Drive product, and they also see that these are some of these products are lab made, and they get worried that I do not want to ingest chemicals in my body. I am very much health conscious. So what response do you have in regards to that?
Sure, sure. So the way that the products are made is using a process called protein extrusion. Okay.
Okay.
Now, protein extrusion, what it does essentially is it mechanically extracts out the protein, which means it's a chemical-free process. It's mechanically, actually, with pressure, high amounts of pressure, extracting out protein from plant-based sources like peas or soy. There are people who are doing research into other plant-based sources as well, like moong dal and all of that, right?
Yes.
Sorry. So the protein essentially is being got from plant-based sources without the use of chemicals, uh, and it is then texturized to make it feel like meat. Uh, there are no preservatives in the product because we are freezing it. It's a frozen product at minus 18 degrees, so we
Right.
can do away with the preservatives. And again, that was a huge reason for why we went with frozen, because we wanted to have it as a preservative-free sort of product, right?
Right.
So in all of those things, there are no chemicals. The only nature identical flavoring that we add is the meat flavoring to give it that little bit of a meaty feel.
Okay.
And that again is plant derived. So it's pretty healthy in that sense, if I would call it that. However, I would refrain from calling all of the products healthy, because honestly, nuggets by itself, even if you're consuming chicken nuggets, are not really that healthy. They're fried, right?
Okay.
So if you're really going for the health aspect of it, then I would suggest you consume a cleaner product like a keema, which is just pure protein, which has high amounts of protein and all of that, right? And doesn't have any
Okay.
of the breads and is not fried. You can make it into a cleaner sort of product.
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that would actually, yeah,
In fact, I would
maybe.
actually like to add to that.
Okay.
It's a very good question, because I think more and more our research is also taking us towards the path of being a clean label. So we don't want to have we want to have maybe a maximum of, say, 5 ingredients on the back of pack, and
Okay.
give the same taste, give the same texture with just those 5 ingredients. And increasingly the world over, people are moving towards cleaner labels,
Right.
and even our R&D team is working in the same sort of path.
Okay. Yeah, so you see, like, people are actually, because of internet and widespread adoption of health-based products, people are getting health conscious. COVID accelerated that a lot. That people don't want to end up becoming unhealthy because they want to prolong their lifespan. That's why this question I had in my mind, I wanted to ask.
No, absolutely.
So now, I believe, and this is something that I've been speaking to a couple of people who are in the US, that we are not only going to see plant-based meats, but also lab-grown meats. I believe it would be, a timeline is somewhere about after 2025, that we will see a massive widespread adoption, at least in the US, of lab-grown meats. And in China, they have already started testing out some of these things. So how do you plan to compete with that? And if not compete, do you will you completely change your process of creating the products and switch to this process of growing your own meat and providing it to people?
So very good question, and honestly, that is where this whole alternative protein or smart protein trend is headed. There's a lot of
Yeah.
companies, not commercially available yet, but there's a lot of companies who are already making lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat, I don't know if you're aware of how it's made. It's basically you're almost doing a biopsy of live cells from the animal
Yes.
without killing the animal, from a live animal, and then growing that protein or growing that meat in lab-based conditions, by providing it a diet of or providing it a nutrient rich sort of fluid.
Entire
So
environment. It's
yeah,
basically a cloning
absolutely.
process. It's cloning the process, but you're not actually creating
You're not
a
cloning the
full.
whole animal. You're cloning,
Exactly,
yeah,
precisely.
just the meat. So it's brilliant. I mean, because that is not. I mean, that's not plant based or anything like that. That is actual meat, right?
Yeah.
But we obviously have to be cognizant of the costs that are currently there. So
True.
while you're saying 2025, I would probably say that this would become a reality more towards the end of this decade, like 2030 or so. Although there are companies in Israel, so Israel is actually at the forefront of lab-grown meat currently, and they
Okay.
have government-sponsored programs which are sponsoring companies to do their research into getting lab-grown meats from just laboratories into stores, right?
Right.
There is, so for it to be commercially available, I think lab grown meat, while in the last 4 or 5 years has come from uh, it used to cost about 400,000 to $500,000 per kg to generate per kg of those lab grown meat, which has now come down to about $800. If that can reach maybe 5 or 6 or maybe $10 per kg, that's when it becomes commercially viable, and somebody will pay a slight premium for getting meat which is clean off, because it's cleaner. Like, you're not growing it, you're not killing an animal,
Right.
stuff like that, right? So you might have maybe a 2 to 3x premium which you can ask consumers to pay, but not an 800x premium, right? So that's where we are. So we are keenly watching the space. If and when it does become commercially viable, we will look into bringing that to India as well, and with more Indian sort of products in it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not there yet.
I agree. Like with adoption in India with lab grown meat, first of all, like awareness would have to be again created for this sort of a thing. And, adoption might take a lot of time. I agree in that aspect, 100%.
Yeah.
So, the thing that I also want to ask, this shift is happening with mostly Gen Z and millennials who are opting
Yeah.
for alternative sources of proteins and plant-based meat. So why is that also? Like, why are the younger generation more? Is it because the younger generation is already adaptable to change, or like there is some kind of a virtue signaling that is also going on to actually do this sort of thing? What are your
I
thoughts here?
think I think there's a two or three reasons. One of which is exactly what you said, that they are more open to change.
Yeah.
With so much with indexation of adoption of internet usage and of using the internet as a platform for information gathering is so much higher in millennials and Gen Z, and
True.
they're open to changing their minds from what their parents' generations or their grandparents' generations have been doing all these
Yeah.
years, right? They're okay with saying that, okay, maybe that was not the best way to do it. Maybe there is a better way to do it, which the global knowledge which the internet presents is now available to them, and they can make their own choices. So one is, ease of information availability is very huge in the newer generation. I
Right.
think they are also the more attuned towards thinking about the future of the planet, because they are the ones, or rather we are the ones who have to live into that future, right? We and our next generations have to live into that future. So the younger generation is more, I think, a lot more attuned towards thinking about what to do with the planet. They're the ones who are leading climate change rallies. They're the ones who are really leading climate change thought process globally, not just in India. But there are a few Indians who, few Indian very like, because I'm in this space, so I
Yes.
know a lot of young Indians who are really championing the cause of climate change awareness in Himachal, in Assam, in Uttarakhand, you name it, and they're across the face of the country. So I guess with information availability, it's also this worry that has creeped into their minds, wherein they're thinking about the future of the planet, because they want to leave it a better place than where they came. So I guess that is where the adoption also for alternative proteins. I think alternative protein adoption or alternative meat adoption is a symptom of a larger sort of wave, which is being a conscious consumer, right? They're also
True.
the ones who don't want to buy plastic, who will carry their own shopping bags to the shop, to the supermarket,
Yeah.
who are now interested in electric cars, right? Electric cars is also a part of this whole conscious consumerism. So
Yes.
that's I think where they're coming from, rather where we are coming from. I don't know why I don't count myself in this.
No, you're already a vegan. You're already a vegan. I don't think like you can be any more environmentally conscious than that.
Everybody can do more, I feel.
Okay. So, you actually mentioned that, there are many environmentally conscious, folks who are coming up. So in terms of, influencer strategy, so we are also seeing a lot of, content creators talking about these things. And, as a brand, we are seeing that, and you are primarily right now a D2C brand, right? So in terms of content creator and influencers, who would you think that, would you like to partner with in creating this awareness for, that you feel that, this person would be able to voice our brand perfectly?
So without taking any names, I think in terms of strategy, what we do is we partner with two kinds of people. One is with chefs. And this is purely from the reason of introducing people to the concept of having plant-based meat in a recipe or into the meal that they've been making all this while, right?
Yes.
People are looking at chefs, say, so for example, one of our first collaborations was with chef Thomas Zakaris, who is a fairly well-known, very well-known chef in the country. And we kind of, collaborated with him to make a few recipes with our products in his signature style. So he made like a Kerala meatball curry with our plant-based chicken keema. He made the keema into a ball and made the meatball curry with that. Okay. So the idea behind that is to introduce the concept of having plant-based meat in your meals. Like it doesn't need to be like you can have the same taste, the same experience without without having to compromise on getting it from an animal. Right. So the chefs is probably the first type of influencers that we use. Okay. The second is like what you said, climate influencers, or people who are working at the forefront of climate change. So in fact, there is, and now he's a very close friend as well, by the name of Akash Ranisan. He's one of India's only climate influencers, and he keeps traveling to a lot of far off places in the country, like in Uttarakhand, in Himachal. He stays there and he tells people about the impact of climate change that is being seen in these more interior areas, which we maybe living in cities don't get to experience. Like he's able to tell you that, hey, you know what, there's floods happening because of climate change in all of these areas, So guys like him, and he's, in fact, last year he wrote a book about climate change from an Indian context as well. And we actually helped him write the food aspects or the food impacts of the food impact on climate change for that book. So he's I think he's going to be doing something again this year with it. So we are really hoping that there are much more of these. We need like 1,000 Akash Ranisans to be able to spread the word about how food can have an impact on climate change, and what are the ways that you can mitigate that, right? So you'll see a lot more people in these two spaces from us, obviously apart from Virat and Anushka, to be able to spread awareness about climate change, to be able to spread awareness about the impact of meat on climate change. Right.
So, we have been speaking almost for an hour. We actually exceeded our time limit for an hour. It's almost 4:01. Time actually flew by. I got to learn so many new things with you, speaking with you. So are there any closing thoughts? I would like to know you. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to question. I would love to answer them.
So. First of all, sorry, go ahead.
And the last thing is, like, if people would want to actually get in touch with you, be it for hiring, be it for, they would want to actually partner up as distributors, how would they be able to find you?
Sure. So I think, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. And I must compliment the ease with which you ask these questions and make the other person feel comfortable in talking to you. I think that's a very important trait to have on a podcast, and you're doing a great job of it.
Thank you.
So it was great here. Like you said, I didn't realize that it's already 4 Like we've been talking for over an hour.
I just checked the clock
So
1 second before. Seeing that, I was like, wow,
so
1 hour has passed.
so that's I mean, so that's great. I mean, this was a great session. I think sort of we were able to structure this conversation in a very fruitful manner for anybody listening in. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm available at sohil.wsr at bluetribefoods.com. You can drop in a mail and we can set up some time. So,
Sure.
I'm glad to be a part of this session, glad to be part of hopefully the change that will come from this session
Sure.
as well. So,
And
thanks a lot.
any question for me? Do you any question that you would like to ask?
No, I think
Okay.
I think I think we've discussed about everything. So no more questions for you.
Okay. So with that said, I'll just stop the recording.